Welcome.
Great. Good morning. Paul Mason for Pacific Forest Trust. Thank you for this nice, thoughtful hearing. We appreciate the focus on metrics around tracking these investments, and I want to draw your attention to, and I'll share with the committee staff, a letter that a broad coalition of conservation organizations submitted to the administration, I believe to your committee staff, last year, really lining out 4 guiding principles that would be helpful to consider when moving this money out for expenditure, and those would include transparency, accountability, consistency, and scientific support for the investments. And there's some sub-recommendations that could be helpful to the committee when putting some parameters on these expenditures. Very briefly, I'd like to, support the inclusion of the natural resource expenditures in the plan. I appreciate Senator Pavley highlighting that some expenditures, for example, forestry, are going to bear much greater benefits farther out into the future. By 2020, some of these reforestation and other efforts might not have great benefits, but by 2050, they'll be very, very substantial. And I was really pleased to hear Dr. Hannock really note that investments in the upper watersheds bear so many benefits, both for reducing emissions, increasing sequestration, and protecting our water supply and other co-benefits, that they probably deserve more attention in the overall funding plan. Great. So we look forward to working with the subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mason.
Chairman Leno, members of the committee, my name is Jamie Levin, and I'm a senior project manager for the Center for Transportation and the Environment in Berkeley, California. Our organization and coalition of member and non-member companies wish to express our support for the governor's budget proposal to appropriate $200 million in cap and trade revenues for alternative fuel transportation projects. In particular, we urge your support for dedicating up to $35 million of these funds over the next 1 or 2 years to leverage federal and regional grants to create centers of excellence for the development of fuel cell and battery electric zero-emission transit buses. California has been a world leader in the development and demonstration of zero-emission bus technology. Its fuel cell advanced bus demonstration fleet in the Bay Area has operated nearly 1 million miles and carried over 3 million passengers, mostly serving people living in disadvantaged communities. The development of the Centers of Excellence will provide triple bottom-line benefits to California and our nation by driving down the technology costs through volume procurements, providing zero-emission public transit service, and significantly reducing well-to-wheel carbon emissions. We hope you'll give this serious consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Levin.
Good afternoon. Erica Morehouse. I'm an attorney with the Environmental Defense Fund. And we're generally supportive of the direction this budget proposal is going in, that it's very important to have a portfolio of strong greenhouse gas reducing investments. We do agree with the LAO that cost effectiveness is important, but we believe that it is important to consider the broader suite of benefits, and I think Professor Horowitz's analysis is very helpful in terms of understanding the constraints and also the flexibility that we have to make these transformational investments that are going to lock in reductions for decades to come. And I'll also just mention that we do have ideas that we support in terms of making sure we have strong investments on the front end, and you'll hear about those from some of the other coalitions represented here. And also, we're very supportive of the transparent and strong accounting methodologies that the ARB is committed to making, it sounds like. Thank you so much.
Ms. Morehouse, you get the gold star. Thank you very much.
Chair and members, Scott Hoffmeister, also with the Environmental Defense Fund. I'm here today on behalf of a broader coalition of investors, nonprofits, and clean energy businesses in promoting the creation of a clean energy financing institution, sometimes known as a green bank. Green banks have been created in 3 other states already. We believe the time is ripe for California to follow suit. A state-backed financing institution focusing on clean energy investments such as the Green Bank could leverage significant private capital to help accelerate our transition into a low-carbon economy. I understand that Senator De Leon is may be introducing a bill on this subject. We look forward to working with him on that. We also, as part of this coalition, urge you to consider including in this year's budget a small amount of auction revenue as seed funding to begin setting up this type of financing institution and allocating additional funds in future years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. Dan Edler with the California Clean Energy Fund. We're a San Francisco-based nonprofit whose mission is to accelerate private investment and entrepreneurship behind clean energy policy goals. Also here as part of the Green Bank Coalition to strongly encourage you to think about creating this potentially catalytic new entity that could help focus California's public investments behind innovation and infrastructure and clean tech, in particular because of the important effects it can have on the cost effectiveness of the entire AB 32 regime. The principal design feature of a green bank is to make sure that private money is alongside public money, leveraging public money 5 to 1 or more. You can bring in private sector discipline, make sure that the best projects are selected. You can be certain that, for instance, projects like high-speed rail have appropriate private sector support before public sector capital is committed. This is an incredibly important new way of thinking about public investment to support clean tech, prevalent in green banks across the country and increasingly internationally, and it's an important chance for California to do the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Edler.
Julie Snyder with Housing California. We're here as a leader of the Sustainable Communities for All Coalition. We're particularly interested in the $100 million for sustainable communities. The model projects that it envisions that integrate transportation and housing will generate significant co-benefits for Californians who are modest incomes in the form of lower transportation and housing costs, as well as the long-term greenhouse gas benefits that you all have talked about. We're strongly supportive of working with your staff and others to ensure that those benefits can be quantified. In terms of the potential trailer bill language, I just wanted to highlight 2 things we'd urge the committee to look at. One, ensuring equitable geographic distribution of these funds. Communities all over the state lack transportation and housing choices, and this is an opportunity to invest in a few model integrated projects that show how this can work around the state. So that's one. Number 2, we would urge you to look at the language in subdivision D that allows the funds to be used for a range of things, including but not limited to. We think this language is too expansive. As I mentioned, we'd like to see the funds really targeted to a couple showcase projects that accomplish the co-benefits as well as the GHG reductions.
Great.
So we look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Chuck Mills with California Relief. We're a member of the 535 Coalition, Natural and Working Lands Coalition, and the Sustainable Communities for All Coalition. We're pleased to see a budget blueprint from the administration that proposes investing these revenues in multiple critical issue areas that will help bolster our state's natural resources, benefit our disadvantaged communities, and bring us closer to meeting our AB 32 and SB 375 goals and objectives. We're particularly supportive of the $15 million within the proposed CAL FIRE allocation that would be used to support the department's urban and community forestry program. As Dr. Hannock noted, when done right with strategic drought-tolerant species selection and attention to co-benefits, urban forestry is one of those top-tier no-risk investments. CAL FIRE's urban and community forestry program specifically focuses on projects that can help meet AB 32 objectives and is well positioned to set GHG reduction targets while also implementing greenhouse gas accounting metrics through myriad tools such as iTrees and carbon calculators. We also believe the majority of these funds will support projects that meet and exceed the goals of SB 535. And finally, to echo some of my colleagues' comments, we encourage the legislature to ensure these funds are being invested for their intended GHG reduction purposes, that GHG reduction metrics are applied across the board, and that project co-benefits are appropriately weighted. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mills.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Rico Mastrodonato with the Trust for Public Land, and I also participate in the SB 535 Coalition Sustainable Communities for All and the Natural and Working Lands. We strongly support the notion that strong GHG science inform the priorities of our investments, and that greenhouse gas accounting is consistent regarding the methods and metrics. I really do want to focus my comments on the $100 million to sustainable communities. After looking at the BCP, there's a lot of great stuff in there that we strongly support: the transit, the affordable housing, urban forestry, but there's no explicit open space or green infrastructure mentioned in that. I think urban greening projects not only offer GHG benefits, but a host of human health, water resource, and environmental co-benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mastrodonato.
Hi, good afternoon. It's Michelle Pastero with the Nature Conservancy, and thank you for the opportunity to comment. We do think it's important that the governor's proposed budget includes investments in auction proceeds in reductions. It's very important given the scale and the urgency of the global warming problem. We were also happy to see that the proposal includes support for natural resources And we agree with the earlier conversations around accountability and greenhouse gas accounting. We think that there should be a concurrent effort to make sure that we have the appropriate accounting framework in place to track and monitor reductions over time for many of the reasons that were already discussed. These kind of metrics do exist for natural resources already, too, and could be used to help guide discussions as we move forward. Urban forestry, improved forest management, avoiding conversion of these lands. And there is also a lot of science in the Delta around restoration and the climate benefits there. We support the funding recommendation to the Strategic Growth Council for strategies and plans that integrate affordable housing, transportation, and also working in natural lands, so a little bit broader than what's in the trailable language, not, ag plus the landscape. Incidentally, we are a member of the Sustainable Communities for All Coalition, and we'll be happy to follow up with more detail to be constructive in this process as we go forward. Thanks.
We thank you.
Good morning, Nick Lapis with Californians Against Waste. We are strongly supportive of the money in the plan for recycling, composting, anaerobic digestion. I'm going to keep my comments fairly brief and save it for the subcommittee, but I'd like to say that we've done a really good job over the last 20, 30 years collecting traditional recyclable materials in California. This plan really puts down a down payment for us to go beyond what we've done so far. So the two main areas of focus in the plan for the waste sector are organic materials, which we haven't done a great job recovering from landfills, but also which have the greatest greenhouse gas impact, and keeping recyclables in California instead of shipping them overseas, so we can save the greenhouse gas emissions from shipping them overseas and take those valuable raw commodities and put them into California manufacturing so that we address some of those concerns that were raised earlier about manufacturing leaving the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Ratcliffe. I'm here on behalf of the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority. I'd also like to commend the attention in the plan to natural resources, and just wanted to suggest that the legislature and the administration consider the state conservancies and the Wildlife Conservation Board as a mechanism to deliver the funding. I really agreed with Dr. Sperling's thought that investment in local entities is crucial. The state conservancies are already working in those communities, and groups like the MRCA are able to work very quickly and efficiently to make open spaces, green spaces, key acquisitions for wildlife corridors, avoided development, and things like that. We have a number of projects we're ready to roll out, so I just would like to make that suggestion. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well taken.
Good afternoon. Chris Mertens on behalf of CalSTART, a nonprofit dedicated to the continued growth of the clean transportation industry in California. CalSTART is supportive of the governor's proposed investment in low-carbon transportation. We believe this is a smart investment that leverages successful existing programs to achieve AB 32 goals and provide benefits to disadvantaged communities. These programs for zero and near zero emission cars, trucks, and buses have a proven track record for reducing GHGs and can be implemented quickly. Clean vehicles also have important benefits for disadvantaged communities. These benefits are especially great for the medium and heavy-duty vehicle investments because many of the fleets purchasing these vehicles are located in some of the heaviest polluted air districts in California. For these reasons, we respectfully urge you to support the governor's proposed investment in low-carbon transportation.
Thank you, sir.
Chair members, Lance Christensen from the Reason Foundation, a public policy think tank out of California for the last 35 years. We've done lots of research on both high-speed rail and the cap-and-trade mechanism through AB 32 and find this to be a very inadequate solution, spending hundreds of millions of dollars in a least cost-effective manner. We would seriously advise you to spend more time looking at this. We've done a lot of published studies. We're happy to submit to the committee and look forward to more conversation about this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. Gus Corey on behalf of the Transportation Authority of Marin and Association for High-Speed Trains. Going for the gold star here, so I'll be really short. I'll just say that we're in support of the administration's proposal on the expenditure of the cap-and-trade revenues, and if the trailer bill is going to prescribe and establish a precedent for how those revenues should be spent, then we need to have a broader conversation on state transportation funding. I'm happy to follow up with you individually to have a more robust conversation on how those proceeds should be spent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Corey.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Crystal Jacobson with the County of Placer. And we are a part of the local government coalition that Dr. Sperling spoke of earlier, and so we just want to echo his comments on supporting a local government program as part of this effort, and would like to work with the committee on creating such a program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobson.
Good afternoon, Nicolina Hernandez with the California Association of Port Authorities, which comprises the state's 11 commercial publicly owned ports. We believe ports have already enormously reduced greenhouse gas emissions. They're, in fact, one of the greenest facilities in operations in the world, and have achieved over 70% of reductions in excuse me, in NOx and diesel particulate matter. Excuse me. They continue to focus on cost-effective measures to reduce emissions and are interested in innovative projects that would achieve zero and near zero reductions, and most significantly provide tremendous benefits to local and disadvantaged communities pursuant to SB 535. Excuse me. So we would ask the committee to consider the goods movement sector in the cap and trade discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm John Frith with the California Alliance for Jobs. We represent more than 2,000 heavy construction companies and 80,000 union construction workers in Northern and Central California, and we're also co-chair of the Transportation Coalition for Livable Communities. We support the governor's proposal to use cap-and-trade revenues to help build high-speed rail. In addition, we believe cap-and-trade resources that stem from transportation, especially revenue that is generated at the gas pump, should be used to reduce transportation-related greenhouse gas emissions. We believe our coalition's proposal maximizes the state's effort to accomplish the goal. By supporting the SB 375 process and dedicating funding for integrated transportation systems, including local road repairs related to high-traffic transit corridors, we can make sure that we create family-supporting jobs as we protect the environment. And finally, by competitively allocating funding to MPOs, we can ensure that only the most effective programs to reduce greenhouse gases are funded, which will help the state reach its 2020 goals while enhancing the quality of life and the economy here in California. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair and members, Tim Schott on behalf of the San Francisco Bay Area Rapid Transit District, and Bart through the California Transit Association is also a member of the Transportation Coalition for Livable Communities. When we support what was just stated, we just remind you that transit is unique and organizations that are positioned best to provide those services to get folks out of their car, truly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Would ask you to look at keeping some of the funding, as much of the funding as possible, administered at the local level, especially the SCS funding, and to continue to look at transit expansion as one of the keys to making sure that we can reach those goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schott.
Hi, I'm Tim Anderson, Sonoma County Water Agency. I also work with the local government coalition mentioned earlier, and express our appreciation for the things in this budget for local government programs. As a part of the local climate initiative, we believe there's an opportunity here to develop a program that would focus on local government greenhouse gas emissions reductions specifically. That could do much more than existing programs currently do. And we also understand it may be difficult to create a new program in the coming fiscal year, but there may be an opportunity in this fiscal year to define such a program to be implemented in future years. So we just ask for your thoughtful consideration of that idea. I'm sure there are others who will speak to that yet this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Hello, Bill Higgins with CalCog, and we are the one association that represents all 18 metropolitan planning organizations implementing 375. And what we would say is that we want to focus on the 100 million, and that the state should put the binders on that money to make sure that it gets only the very best of the best projects. However, I think it's a fair question to ask what the regional role is, because you've given the mandate to the regions, and that isn't, I think, addressed. And when you had the conversation about performance metrics, I would note that we are the agencies that have to submit performance modeling to ARB to show our work to see how we're getting reductions. And we've done extra work funded by the Strategic Growth Council to see how we can also do performance metrics for public health, economy, and the environment. So I think for April 4th, we need to have a conversation about what the regional role is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. And it is April 3rd. So don't come a day late.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. Jason Ryan, League California Cities. We are also members of the Local Government Coalition as well as the Transportation Coalition for Livable Communities. Just want to underscore what Dr. Sperling said. We at the local level, I think we are fundamental to the state achieving its greenhouse goal reduction goals. We are poised. Many of us are acting. We just need additional resources. The $100 million for SES is a great start. However, we would like to talk to you guys and potentially grow that pot of money. So we look forward to that April hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Chris Lee with the California State Association of Counties. We're also a member of the Local Government Coalition as well as the Transportation Coalition for Livable Communities. We appreciate the funding in the governor's proposal that is eligible for local government use, but we also, as alluded by Dr. Sperling, agree that there should be a program specifically dedicated to allow local government greenhouse gas reduction projects to go forward. We think that's especially important for projects that could cut across multiple funding areas that are included in the governor's proposal. Second, we support the idea behind the $100 million for sustainable communities implementation consistent with SB 375. However, we think that a regional approach towards allocating those funds would be a better way to ensure that the maximum amount of greenhouse gas reduction happens as a result of that funding. Furthermore, we think it's important to ensure that all the types of projects that are included under a sustainable community strategy are eligible for funding under the $100 million program and in order to implement SB 375. Thanks for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Joshua Shaw with the California Transit Association, representing all of your bus and rail transit systems. Want to thank the governor, his administration officials who are here today, and many of the senators today who acknowledge the vital role of local and regional public transit systems in achieving these greenhouse gas emission reductions. We'll speak in sub 2 about the $50 million rail integration program more at length. On the Sustainable Communities program, as one of the other co-chairs of the Transportation Coalition for Livable Communities with our city, county, MPO partners, including folks like NRDC, we would note a transportation system is just that, a system. It must be integrated. All the parts, whether it's transit or streets and roads, bike, pedestrian facilities, all need to be funded, and we think the best chance for that to be successful is the Sustainable Communities program the governor proposed. We'd like to work with you to make that even more effective and acknowledge that locals should have the flexibility to spend their funds where they provide the most GHG benefits. We think that includes maintenance and improvements of the current system, potentially expansion of public transit, and we note that projects that encourage more compact land use, upzoning by cities and counties, for instance, are essential to get the most bang for the buck from our transit services, and we'd want to work with you on making sure that happens. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
Mr. Chair, Justin Fanzal on behalf of the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. Here as a member today of the Transportation Coalition for Livable Communities. You've already heard a unified voice about allowing the money to flow to the regions. As one of the state's 18 MPOs, we've been tasked with the job of creating a sustainable community strategy to implement SB 375. It mirrors what's outlined in the program, so we would simply say that that money going straight to the regions is going to get the best bang for the buck right there at the region level. Also, the $100 million is great, but we would like to point out to the committee that we'll be continuing to ask for the full repayment of the $400 million. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm Jolena Vorse with the Urban Counties Caucus. I'm also part of the Local Government Coalition. We support, obviously, the $100 million to the sustainable communities because that would go to local governments, but we're a part of the coalition that is asking for money directly to local governments. I don't think I need to tell members of this committee that counties have been hard hit in the last 5 years in the various budget cuts, whether it's health and human services, taking on realignment, transportation, and we have a great need in our communities for more affordable housing, better infrastructure, and so we think we're best placed to give you the strongest GHG reductions in the shortest amount of time. And so we would ask you to support and encourage you to place more money either in the SCS or in a separate program directly to local governments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Christina Lockie with the California Special Districts Association. We represent over 1,000 independent special districts providing core local services like water, sanitation, and parks and recreation. We're part of the Local Government Coalition, so I just want to echo the support of creating a program specifically for local governments. We're in the best position to help use these funds as an integral part of working with the state to reduce the state's greenhouse gas emissions. We have existing networks, programs, shovel-ready projects ready to go. We just don't necessarily have the capital needed for some of these programs.
Thank you, Ms. Lockie.
Good afternoon. Steve Wallach on behalf of the Alameda County Transportation Commission. They're also a part of the Transportation Coalition and supports the goals that they've expressed. Particularly, they would like to urge you to consider creating a locally administered fund for the SCA's implementation projects.
Thank you, Mr. Wallach.
Hi, Matt Robinson on behalf of the Solano Transportation Authority. First of all, we'd just like to commend the governor for the appropriation of cap-and-trade dollars specifically as they relate to transportation. That being said, I think we would echo a lot of the comments that have been made with regard to a more regionalized approach, expansion of the types of projects that are now eligible for cap-and-trade under that sustainable communities piece. And I think it goes without being said that we'd like to see some more money dropped in that bucket as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Will Barrett with the American Lung Association in California. The Lung Association strongly supports moving forward this year with the AB 32 expenditures to reduce climate pollution that threatens the health of all Californians. We believe that the health and clean air goals of AB 32 can be advanced through prioritizing investments that maximize the health and air quality benefits, along with the targeted near and longer-term greenhouse gas reductions. We believe the expenditure categories in the budget proposal and the AB 32 investment plan correctly target some of the largest pollution sources in the state by focusing on low-carbon transportation. We want to see cleaner fuels, cleaner freight, zero-emission vehicles come forward, along with more sustainable transportation choices for residents in furtherance of SB 375 goals. Making the most of these investments to better the health of our residents today, and especially among our most disadvantaged communities, as under SB 535, will go a long way to building resiliency to future climate challenges. So to ensure that we get the most benefits from these investments, we believe that the investments themselves, greenhouse gas reductions, and the public benefits should be monitored and reported consistently across the state agencies involved. And we look forward to working with you as the GHG accounting metrics are developed. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Catherine Phillips with Sierra Club, California. Thank you for staying this long.
You get the last word, Ms. Phillips.
Yes, I get the last word, and that's a rare treat. I just sent in yesterday our letter that goes into fuller detail about budget items, but I want to highlight a few related to the cap and trade. One is the governor is repaying about $100 million of the $500 million that was kept last year. We'd like to see that number go up. We think that there is enough of an urgent need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that the whole $500 million ought to be paid back this year. Second, we want to make sure that any of the greenhouse gas emissions cap and trade revenues that are spent in a way that help avert the worst of climate change. The science suggests, the public suggests, public will suggest, policymaker actions suggest that we all agree we need to do as much as we can now to stop what could be a much worse climate change in the future. And what we gain from that is less expense later for adaptation and a more livable planet. And given that, we think that on the high-speed rail issue, we've been given kind of a Solomon's choice here, because Sierra Club has long supported high-speed rail, believes very strongly that it's part of a robust transportation system. However, it will not provide near-term greenhouse gas emissions, and there will actually be a little bit of a blip in greenhouse gas emissions from high-speed rail construction. So it'll be a long time before we start seeing real reductions from high-speed rail. We think that a better use of cap and trade funds right now, because of the science, because of the state of climate change, is to put those cap and trade revenues into projects that will get us near-term reductions as soon as possible. That doesn't mean there won't be availability for high-speed rail money in the future, but we need to do as much as we can now for those projects that will provide near-term reductions. Finally, two things. I want to underscore something I forgot to mention in my letter, but everybody else has brought up and I think is worth reiterating, and that is accountability is very important. So in all of these projects, we hope that there will be a robust accountability, both for the public and for the cause of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and spending this money the right way. And finally, there is one little element that we noticed in, thanks to some of our colleagues, in the way that CAL FIRE is proposing spending some of the cap and trade money on fuel reductions. And we mentioned that in detail in our letter, but I just want to bring it to your attention, because I think that's an example of one place that should not be getting cap-and-trade funds. There are other funds available, the SRA funds, for instance, but generally, most of what the governor is proposing about the $600 million of the $850 million, we agree with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. I want to thank our committee members and all the stakeholders who participated today, stayed for public comment, of course, all of our presenters. I think we've taken a very good, significant first step into better understanding the governor's expenditure plan for cap-and-trade revenues, and our first step in analyzing the very many options that we have for that expenditure plan. So for those who are interested, stay tuned. April 3rd, the Budget Subcommittee 2 will be digging even deeper into this proposal. Thank you very much. We stand adjourned.